So once again, my name is Kate Delaney. I am the South Jersey organizer for Food and Water Watch. Delighted to be here with everyone, with old friends and new friends. And the focus of this panel is really going to be something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is organizing in your community and frontline community fights. So we have a panel of terrific organizers who are doing all they can to make a difference where they live, and we'll be sharing some of the work that they've done, the challenges that they've faced, and then we hope to also, after we hear from them, have some conversation. So our thought is, if it works for everybody in the room, to just kind of, once we hear from the panelists and we have some questions we want to ask, then maybe just have you guys raise hands and ask questions that way, just so that hopefully we can have the conversation rolling throughout. All right, so having said that, the format, again, is I'm going to just do a quick introduction of all of our panelists one by one and have them share a little bit about the work that they're doing. We specifically want to hear about the fight that they're engaged in, information about their organizing ideas, their strategies, etc. And then we have some questions again, and then we'll take the questions that you guys have. So first up, I'm really excited to introduce Jimmy Lee, who is the leader of the Turnpike Trap Coalition and also a board member of the Hudson County Complete Streets. So I'm going to turn the mic one by one, and you guys can keep us looped in on if it's loud enough up here. Yeah, just a little bit about you.
Oh, about the, Jimmy Lee. I live in Jersey City. We're like all volunteer working on a variety of issues that are really deeply connected between transportation, transportation safety, climate change, the environment, and local pollutants and environmental justice. We work on the Turnpike Trap, the $11 billion widening of the Turnpike extension, and Vision Zero. And we see those two issues as very, very deeply connected. So, yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I could probably have you introduce yourself, but yes, I would like to also just, introduce Chloe of ICC to talk a little bit about the work you're doing in the Ironbound.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe. I am the environmental justice organizer with Ironbound Community Corporation based in Newark, New Jersey. And, thank you. And we do a lot of work. We do a lot of incineration education to teach folks about the dangers of incineration and how we can go into better clean energy alternatives such as offshore wind and solar power energy, clean, 100% renewable energy. And also going to prevent from further destruction of our air quality when it comes to building more power plants in our community. We're a 4 square mile community and we already have so much industrialization within those 4 square miles, and we are trying to stop the Passaic Valley Sewage Commission from bringing in another power plant into our community. So I'm definitely excited to talk more about that. Oh, you're not gonna?
I'll introduce.
I didn't know what the vibes were. That's all right.
Hi everybody, my name is Janice and I am from the city of Salem, way down on the Turnpike exit 1, right before you cross over to go into Delaware. And I am, I'm very reluctant to call myself an organizer. I am just a regular person who is trying to keep our water public and affordable. We live in a community of, the community is occupied. How do I want to say this? Anyway, the community is about 70% investor owned. So we are a renter's community, very poor, overburdened, environmental justice. People can't afford to pay $700 for water in my community. And so I just stepped up to the plate, not only for myself, but for the people around me who don't have the energy, the wherewithal, the knowledge, the whatever it takes to fight back. And that's what I'm doing in my community. Thank you.
And last but not least, Al of the Ramapo Nation. And can we pass this all the way across?
That's what I get for not giving you a bio.
I think I'm good. I mean, it depends on your perspective. Yeah, I know. Anashi Kishalamokwing, Anashi Kwachi Manitou, Elamiliang, Gaganai Ki Walk, Imbi Walk, Kashon Walk, Dindao, Kishalamokwing, Quingo Wichmail. I'm Al from the Ramapo, Muncie, Lenape Nation. We're the descendants of the original people of this region. And what I said was a prayer in the Muncie language. It was actually a prayer of thanks. Our word for thanks being Anashik, Anashiki Shalamokwing, Anashik Kwachi Manitou. Thank you who created us from thought. Thank you, Great Spirit, Elamiliang, for giving us. Gaganai Ki, Walk Imbi, Walk Hashon, Walk Tindao. Our Mother Earth, waters, wind, and fire. And these prayers, which are similar to many types of prayers you'll hear by indigenous nations in different languages, are prayers of thanks, and it's a recognition that what we most need in this world, we actually already have, what we most need. You know, we need our waters, we need good water, we need good air. Unfortunately, we're in a man-made system that is rapidly destroying the good air and the good water. But that doesn't have to be that way, and that's why it gives me a lot of hope to see people here. I was a little bit late because I was at a climate conference with some man named Albert Gore. You know, he's talking about inconvenient truths, and he's going on about this as well. And it's actually this intersection, because he was also talking about how we're getting to the point now where even economically, the renewables are even now starting to make economic sense. I mean, it's always made sense, but now it seems like the economists are catching up to the rest of us, or the money, except for those in the fossil fuel industry. But I'm here to also talk about two major issues, global in scope, but also very local, that we're dealing with. And one is the Indian Point Power Plant on the Hudson River that wants to dump pollution into our waters. These are waters as cesspools, as they always do, whatever industry they are. And they're still planning on doing that. The company's name is Holtec, and they're actually based in Camden. And the second is a project that is being planned for the Northeast, starting in New Jersey in the Ramapo Mountains, called Project Maple. And it's a massive expansion of the fossil fuel pipeline infrastructure with frac gas from Pennsylvania to go all the way through Stony Point, cross the Hudson River into Massachusetts. So, what we get our strength from, organizing principle, is the land and the waters themselves. We are we're keepers of the past, guardians of the passageway. So these are some of the issues that we're dealing with right now. Anashik, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, lots of, or some Camden County folks in the room, so you don't need to tell us about Holtec. We know who they are.
Need a trigger warning.
Exactly. So yeah, it's such great work being done really on this panel statewide, which I think makes it so hugely powerful. So what I would like to hear each of you speak to in your very different but very essential fights is some of the lessons that you've learned in your organizing, just some takeaways that, things you've learned along the way in your community doing this organizing work that you could share out with the group. So some lessons that you would offer. And we can start with whoever wants to go first, or we can go down the line. Not the line, yeah. Not the line.
Thank you. Lessons learned. You can't do it by yourself. You just cannot do it by yourself. This has been, for me personally, one of the most difficult journeys that I have ever been on. As I mentioned earlier, we are a renters community. Most of the homes in our community are owned by people who do not have a stake in the community other than collecting rent. And so what happens is when you live in a renters community, renters believe that the issues aren't affecting them because they don't own. And so when they have those thoughts, they're reluctant to get involved. I don't own a home, so why should I fight? My water is included in my rent, so why should I fight? So when our city government decided to engage in this WIPA process, has anybody ever heard of WIPA? Water Infrastructure Protection Act? And pay attention to this because this can happen in your community too. With this WIPA thing, I'm just going to call it a thing because that's what it is, your government can come into your community and decide to privatize or sell your water sewer system without your permission. And your water and your sewer, if you're in a municipality that has public water, you own your water. You pay the bills. The water belongs to you. And this is what happened in our community. Our city was in $26 million debt. And so to cover that debt, they decided without speaking to anybody that they were going to go straight for this WIPA process, and they did not need our permission. They did not need our input to make that decision. And when you have your public utilities owned by a private entity, you have no control. You have no control over your rates. You have no control over anything that that involves the water sewer system other than your wallet and how much you have to pay. That's the extent of your control. And so what we did was, because our city was not a Faulkner city, if you live in a city with with a charter that's under the Faulkner Act, your municipality would not be able to sell your water sewer system without your permission. It would have to go as a referendum on a ballot. But there are 15 municipalities in New Jersey that are not under the Faulkner Act. And with that, and Salem is one of them, the municipality, the city government was able to say, we're going to sell it and we're not going to have any discussion about it. Okay, so what I had to do was educate myself to find out how we could, as a community, intervene, and I did just that. And what I found out, based on the law and our charter, we were able to put a petition together. That was part of the process that was never explained to us. So after the municipality did the resolution and voted and decided they were going to sell, they never said to us, well, you have 45 days to get a petition together. And you had to have a certain number of people signing the petition based on whatever happened in the last general election. But anyway, so we found that out, we got the petition together, and that gave us the opportunity to put the question on the ballot, okay, as to whether or not the community members wanted to sell. But then the next issue was American Water coming into an overburdened community, a very poor community where people either don't have jobs, don't have transportation, or have 3 or 4 jobs just to put food on their table, and they didn't have time to fight. So what American Water did is they started coming in with pizza and hot dogs and toys and going into schools and giving candy to the children to take propaganda home to their parents. Literally went into the churches, convinced the pastors to get up in the pulpit and sell American water propaganda. And what happened was, when election day came, nobody showed up to the polls. Out of 4,000 people who were registered to vote in Salem, we had a turnout of 7%. That was it. But the biggest problem that I had was I was by myself. I was pretty much walking in the rain, knocking on doors. And I don't know what the answer is to try to get people, especially from a very poor community, people who have been disenfranchised, never listened to, and they just feel like, it's a hopeless situation, so why should I get involved? And Kate can tell you, I was in the hospital having heart surgery, am I right? Begging Kate and one of our commissioners to please go knock on some doors so I could get this heart surgery. And when I come out, I'll go back and finish. And they did that for me. They did that for me. The biggest obstacle is always gathering people who are willing to work. You cannot walk down this road by yourself. And even if it takes people from other communities, like the communities that you live in, if you ever hear of an issue, whatever, it's in Newark or wherever this gentleman is, I'm telling you, we need help. And we especially need help from white people. There's a racial component to this. Whoever doesn't want to hear it, I'm sorry. That's the reality of it. So, my takeaway from this is, if you need help, ask for help. If you don't get help, do the best you can. That's what I did.
Those are a lot of amazing, important points. Like, I'm reflecting on that myself about the experiences that I've been having in doing organizing and starting it, and resonate with everything you said completely. Like, you cannot do this alone. Like, I wish I could just lift up this whole state and just turn it into a garden, but I can't. But honestly, thinking about how I even got into this work and reflecting on my personal experience of it, I didn't even realize I was born and raised in an environmental justice community until I started working as an organizer. Nobody came up to me and let me know that I was less than a mile away than X amount of industrial facilities or X amount of trucks passing by, over 300 to 500 within a day. Nobody's telling me that. And then on top of that, I also my mom didn't realize one of the reasons why I was born with asthma was because of where we were living. One in four children, 1 in 3 actually, in the state, specifically in Newark, have asthma. And that's a rate 3 times higher than the state of New Jersey, one of the higher rates in the whole country. Being able to advocate for those things has been such an experience, to say the least, and being able to talk about it with other people so that people are more aware of these things. And gossiping is important in these spaces as well. Being able to tell other people about the things that are going on in your community and being engaged in that way is so important, because otherwise people are just not going to know, because PBSC is not going to tell you why they have these open vats of sewage in the community, making one of the worst smells out here. They're not going to, Covance's not going to let you know that they're bringing out purple plumes because people are dumping iodine in their trash. They're not going to let you know these things. You're just going to be questioning it. And it's important to ask those questions because that's how answers get given. Yeah. And I don't remember what the question was.
No, yeah, lessons learned. These are both, yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah, that gossiping is important. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I really identify with the idea that you need friends and alliances and information as well. With both Safe Streets and the Turnpike Trap, I started off like very, very naive. I started off with thinking the system made sense. We have a progressive governor, a climate governor maybe. I started off on the street side. I was like, oh, okay. I almost got ran over at an intersection, like a car stopped, to me in the crosswalk. The car behind it thought, I don't know, whatever, they went around that first car, and they almost hit me. I thought, well, I'll tell the city, I'll tell the mayor, I'll tell the council person, I'll ask for a stop sign. It's gonna make a lot of sense. I see a lot of people have problems with this intersection. And they said no. I didn't understand why. They said the traffic engineering says, like, you can't have a stop sign. It'll be more dangerous with a stop sign. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. So many people walk back and forth every single day. It's a dense city, Jersey City, right? A lot of people. And I thought, how could this be? And that was my study. And then I started looking at traffic engineering, and I realized, you know, what they measure themselves on is cars. They don't measure people. They don't measure buses, they don't measure transit, they don't measure pedestrians, they don't care. That's not part of it. They have an A through F rating, and the A through F rating is just like how traffic jammed are you? How slow is the traffic? That's nothing about safety, nothing about sustainability, nothing about all those people that rely on transit or are just walking around their block, or just walking their dog or walking their kid, etc. When it came to the turnpike, I thought, wow, this must be a big mistake. $4 billion to widen the turnpike, through Jersey City to end at the bottleneck of the Holland Tunnel. This is a big mistake. It's a big misunderstanding. We have a climate governor. What we're going to do is we're going to write a letter. We're going to write a letter to NJDEP, and you know what? Like, let me ask Bug JC. Let me ask Hudson County Complete Streets. All the Hudson County biking groups, and it's like, oh, look, can we all sign? Like, can we make a letter? And they're like, yeah, let's do this. This makes sense. We sent a letter to NJDEP, and someone said, okay, I know a reporter. I used to, well, I don't know, I used to live with him or whatever. So we sent it off to a reporter. We got an article, and it had a picture of Jersey City and like a towering highway above. I thought, wow, we're good here. We're good here. And I thought, yes, this is amazing. I hadn't really generated news before. I thought, okay, now everybody knows about this. Now everybody knows how stupid this is. $4 billion, 8 miles, like climate change, environmental justice. No way they're just gonna keep going, right? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So, no, it's like it's no response. Just nothing. We dialed in, made a big scene, got another article. I was like, wow, what's going on here? Then, in terms of, so that's, then in terms of Oprah, I know they're trying to gut Oprah, and, we would have never learned just how silly this whole project is, like, without Oprah. We filed, like, someone in the community actually taught us. They just, like, anonymously sort of filed their own Oprah, sent us.
What's Oprah?
Oprah is your right to get public documents, whether they're released or not. So if a document exists within the government, and there isn't some kind of confidential information, like a contract, or certain things about personal information or things like that, and of course they can redact as well, then you can request it, and they have to give it to you. It just may take some time. They don't have to produce like new information, but if that document exists, they are supposed to send it to you. Right now, they're saying it costs too much money to do, and so they would prefer to just not do it, essentially. So there's a law that's being considered to gut Oprah. So one of the things that we learned when we filed this Oprah was just so powerful. Like, someone else in the community taught us how to do it. They sent us like some information that they Oprah from the turnpike. I was like, oh wow, it's that easy? You just like say what you want? Like, how could it be that easy, right? That's basically what you do. And we got the engineering report for the study of this turnpike extension. It's like 200 pages. I thought, wow, there must be a good reason for this. There's something in here that explains why this was actually a good project. And we're just wrong, we just don't understand. There's so many cars, it's impressive, right? Like, it looks important. Everyone tries to stay out of the way, like of that traffic and whatever. But in fact, it turns out, they're like, alternative one, fix the bridge for $260 million, right? 260, that's it, right? And it'll last for 40 years. Alternative two, tear down the turnpike and build it back wider for $4 billion. And then, maybe you'll save up to 3 minutes and we'll have a wider turnpike that for the cars waiting for the Holland Tunnel. They basically want to have like a wider turnpike parking lot, you know, queuing at the Holland Tunnel, right? And so I was like, wow, that's it? Like, that's what you got? You know, there's so many interesting things in there. There's like, oh, whoa, we want to tell the light rail, like, we're going to shut down and we're going to move it somewhere else and, you know, make them do something else. And then the cost escalated, became, you know, 4.7 billion, then it became 10.7 billion. You know, it's like subway, man. Like, you know, you could move 20 times the number of people with the subway. We learned from New York City transit data that over 90% of New Jersey to New York commuters, so not inclusive of Long Island, Queens, you know, Westchester, Connecticut, none of that, just New Jersey to New York, 90% of those commuters are already using mass transit. And that the Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel, which is, you know, every day torturing so many communities, you know, it's 3% each, you know, and it's really nothing. Like a 10% improvement to New Jersey Transit trains, the bus lanes, or the PATH trains would be greater than the entire capacity of the Holland Tunnel. And so, you know, Oprah is your friend. You know, like there's so much information that's there. You know, I think there's also dissemination of that information. I'll say that there is actually also available there's a lot of reports and public data that is already available as well. So, you know, and how do you get that out to the community? Like, we've taken the route of, you know, we try to do some press stuff. Once in a while, we'll do editorials. You know, local journalism is not doing so well. I really hope we can change that as a society. But oftentimes, we're really happy to take like well thought out, well linked, you know, with evidence like op-eds. You have a letter and you've thought about it. You're not just like, I just don't like this, right? Like if you have thought about it and you have facts, you have links to reports and things like that, we found they're very happy to work with us, and it's information that the community doesn't already have. And yeah, that's like, you know, these facts of like 3% of the Holland Tunnel, that's something that's just like sitting there, like in a PDF on, you know, a very important government website, but you know, most people will never see. And then in terms of friends, you know, like, yes, it's like taken 2 years to just make this an issue that at least I think the climate, environmental, and transit community care about. There's a lot further to go in terms of educating the public. But I think just in terms of being able to just share this information and share that it deeply affects New York City and what they're trying to do with reducing congestion. They want less cars, right? Like this idea of like, oh, tall buildings, therefore we need like 20-lane highways. Like it's completely backwards. Like New York City has the fewest number of lanes, and they want less cars, and they're going to get more sustainability and safety and capacity from mass transit, and just being able to work with like transportation alternatives in New York, Empower New Jersey, and that huge coalition here, Food and Water Watch, Clean Water Action, and just work together. There's so much intersection, right? Like Empower New Jersey out ahead and saying like, why are there $24 billion in highway capital projects overall if we're working on climate change? Like why, right? And filing a petition, and we had no idea. We were just like, oh, $4 billion on this, right? But there are a lot of people thinking about that and working on that and organizing on that. And you know, New Jersey Bike Walk and Hudson County Complete Streets, which I'm now a part of. But sort of, you know, looking at Vision Zero, like one of the, I don't want to just give you facts, but I think it's relevant here and why it's a coalition and sort of a kind of a unifying issue is, you know, transportation, it turns out, is not just about, you know, economic equity and access and capacity, but it's also about safety, it turns out, and as well as, you know, the sustainability of it. You know, buses are 20 times safer per passenger mile than car driving is. You know, trains are 17 times safer. You don't see seatbelts on trains. Like, why not? Well, it's basically super safe. You know, even in an airplane, you know, airplane is 1,500 times safer than it is like driving the same distance. So You know, that Baltimore bridge that went down, I think 6 people died. You know, over 600 people died on New Jersey streets from crashes. It's pedestrians, bicyclists, and people in cars, and those are preventable. So, yeah, just being able to think about like our overall goals of less carbon, you know, right, you know, safer roads, and improved transportation. I think that's really helped us find friends and work on things all together, and yeah, that's been helpful.
I suppose I should have introduced myself as, and saying, I think they say this in the AA there and the NA, you know, I am Al, and I am a fossil fuel and energy addict. I think that's what they say is the first step in the recovery is to admit that you have a problem. And unfortunately, there's many people, many of them in power, and almost all of them definitely in the fossil fuel industry and in the nuclear industry, they're in deep denial. And I was at a conference called Beyond Bars at Columbia, and I can't put it better than, as far as lessons learned, a woman who got there to speak, and I'll just paraphrase her. She says, "We don't know stuff, and we can prove it." You know, so. And then she went on to talk about like what they were doing, what actions they were taking to address the terrible situation of the prison industrial complex and that thing. But you know, what she did have is heart, and you know, knowing that whatever we do, that we're bound to make some mistakes, but to keep moving forward. So. I think that's one of the lessons I was learning from what she had to say, and even my own experiences, to keep moving forward. And if it wasn't for my ancestors in the Ramapo Mountains, you know, we wouldn't even be there right now. So whatever hardships they faced, you know, I take inspiration from that, you know, although we've lost a lot, you know, in terms of culture, language, and many other things, you know, we do have and still have, although under threat. We have our lands, our waters, our air, and in these mountains, even though they're impacted. I suppose the second step there in the AA process there, and our NA process, is to admit you're powerless by yourself, just to address that kind of situation. I think that was alluded to and discussed on the panel here. You know, we need allies, whomever we are, wherever we are. And the environmental justice communities, you know, these are communities on the front line. You know, I remember in our conflict on our sacred lands, and you know, that's where I met Matt Smith. There was an interesting film called American Native, and it gave the perspective of the homeowners in the area that didn't want us to pray. I guess as long as we were invisible, it was fine. But as long as once they saw us, then there was a problem. And as far as that second step, acknowledging a higher power, I mean, that's important to us, our prayers and our meditations. So I found it interesting that one of the neighbors, one of the reasons why he said he didn't want us there is that we were lowering their property values. Mind you that our prayers are about, you know, clean air, clean water, these matters. I think that's, in whatever property you have, you need that. But that was one of his issues, is we were lowering their property values. And then he said something interesting. He said, you know, what's going to happen if my children want to sell the property and move somewhere else, and the property value is lower? And I think that gets back to what I was saying earlier about the renters and, you know, what kind of relationship we have to our community and our lands. Because it dawned on me that, you know, our community, we don't have that kind of relationship. And these are the lands that we emerged from, that we are you know, members of, that are us. And, you know, if we don't have this relationship with our lands, then we cease to be who we are. So that was one of the lessons I was learning in these campaigns is the, you can call it prayer or meditation. Our word for creator is Ki Shalom Okwen, who created us from thought. It's a recognition that whatever we're doing, however we do it, as part of that circle is thought. It's a thought, it's an intention, that you call meditation and prayer, and that we need to include our prayers for the good of water and the good air and what we're doing. I think too many of us, particularly in the finance or development sector, forget that. We tend to, in that sector, look at land as a commodity or water as a commodity. And that itself has causes a lot of problems. And yeah, just a word about profit. It's to take tobacco, for example. Tobacco is a sacred plant. And I remember when I was studying Spanish, I asked the teacher, I said, in my bad Spanish, what about the medicine people? Did they have abuse problems? And the teacher said, no, they don't, because I asked why. I said, weren't there some that, and she said that they used it because of their love of Creator. And I thought, well, weren't there some that love Creator more than others? But then something dawned on me, there wasn't profit involved. There was no one profiting from the use of tobacco prior to Columbus. Afterwards, there was someone profiting from it. So I think a lot of the problem you have, say, with the air, for example, the pollution is that there's people who are profiting from the pollution itself and can think they can escape the effects if they don't live in that community. So yeah, I mean, the asthma, I remember I had, my sons, they were born in Paris there, and we had to go to the hospital because they had bronchiolitis. They were twins. And then I found out that 40,000 people die in France every year because of bad air. It's 200,000 here in the United States. I think it's 1 million in China, and 7 or 8 million worldwide. So when we talk about climate change, it's not just an abstract issue. We have 1 in 3 people. I had no idea it was 1 in 3. Yet they want to blame it on your genetics, or people didn't have enough wherewithal to get a good education, stuff like that. I mean, it's overwhelming. That's about racism, and it's finest or its worst. So lessons learned. We're still learning them, but starting off with prayers of thanks, prayers of Creator, and I have a friend. I've met him once, Noam Chomsky. He can't figure out why we're still alive. And I think it has something to do with our mother's love for us. And if we can recognize that just us being here is a miracle, I think then that we can go forward with hope. And it's going to take many other miracles for us to get out of this mess, but keep in mind that there are many miracles that it took for us to get here, so I'm hopeful going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, those are amazing lessons, and I really appreciate the mention of, okay, of the Oprah bill, which is very timely, the Open Public Records Act, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Oprah Machine, a great resource that is run by my amazing colleague in the back, Charlie Cradaville. So yes, our need to be able to access government records is really important, I'm sure, in all of these fights. So I think at this point we'd like to turn it over to audience questions, and we were thinking just to do raise hands. Maybe if people wanted to step up and use the mic, unless maybe just stand and speak loudly.
I feel like a lot of work when you start in a community, especially, turns into an us versus them situation, no matter how much you want to avoid that. So how do you work around the us versus them, or seeing these issues as, oh, that only affects this group and not me, or it's not my problem because I'm not directly impacted. I just feel like there's too much of us versus them going on that's stopping us from just moving forward.
Well, I turned on this mic. It's probably going to die out soon, so I'm just trying to see how we can make this a little easier. But for starters, to be honest, I haven't changed that rhetoric at all. I mean, I think the bigger question is who's us and who's them. I oftentimes in this work and learning more about how we are as a society while we are, commodifying accessibility, it's really trying to hold them accountable. And when I say them, I mean the government. that's who my them is as of right now. Because number one, we have been brought to a place where government has become so complex and inaccessible and hard to understand that it's hard for us to engage in it. And another point in that is to say that we have gone into a society where everything has become so individualized that it's hard to be community-based and hard to come together to fight these issues that we're dealing with. I think that it's important to, number one, be more engaged as a community and figure out what community really looks like to us, whether it be on a local level, whether it be on a level of cultural, or all of the above in all these spaces. I think it's important to think about that from that aspect.
Yeah, other folks on the panel. Does that one work?
Does this work?
Yeah, yes it does. Okay.
This works. I remember going to the Hudson River there. In our language, we call it the Mohicanatuck, the river that flows both ways. And seeing the Indian Point power plant structures there, the twin towers, which all these power plants have, and looking at them as monsters, and then I thought, wait a second, those containment structures are there to protect us. And then I thought about the workers there. And to kind of get to what you're saying, it's really a matter of, for me, keeping even your discourse, your thoughts, your actions on a higher level. Those workers, I mean, those nuclear atomic workers, we need them because they are working on these plants to protect us if they do their job right, to protect us from the nuclear and radiation elements that are there. We have a system, though, that is adversarial and tries to pit us against each other, so trying to work through that, recognizing them as human beings, I think is important. And in the circles I'm in, I want to tell them, and I will when I have the chance in some of these public meetings, is look, you guys should have job security for the next million years. That's how long it takes to really adequately deal with these, nuclear and radiological elements. Unfortunately, they themselves get a lot of propaganda saying, oh, these environmentalists want to take your jobs away and things like that. So yeah, I think, and also in law, they teach you, although maybe doesn't work necessarily 100%, but maybe even nearly that, but to disagree without being disagreeable. So you can engage in these adversarial conflicts without necessarily attacking the person personally. Unfortunately, the people I do like to attack me personally, but I still try to keep my actions on a higher level.
Yeah, I don't see, at least the issues that we work on, and that most of the issues that I hear about as being us versus them, I really see it, and I don't see it as zero sum either. I think very much what is happening, especially in New Jersey, is special interest versus the public interest. And these sums are so vast, and the costs to our communities through pollution, through other externalities like safety issues, are so vast that it is not to the general public's benefit for any of these things to happen, right? When we're talking about $24 billion in highway widenings across New Jersey, right? Like you're widening lanes, Brunswick Parkway, Turnpike, all throughout, from South Jersey to North Jersey, right? That is not beneficial, like, to spend money this way. You think about safety, how many billions of dollars are we saving, does it cost because of 600 people dying per year? Over 15,000 crashes on the Turnpike every single year. And they say like they're widening for safety. I don't know what they're talking about. If you think about like our even insurance costs. We live in something called a no-fault state. If you've been in a crash and maybe there's some kind of payout or something, you may have heard of this concept. You know, what happens when a pedestrian is hit by a car in New Jersey? Right? Who pays? Right? The pedestrian's car insurance pays. It's no fault. What about people that don't have cars? 40% of households in Jersey City don't have cars. Who pays them? The state pays. It's no fault. You can't make the other car's insurance pay for it. That's not how it works. If it's 2 cars, you crash. If it's not, you're not losing limbs, you know, or something worse, right? Like, it's a no-fault state, right? And we pay out $80 million, New Jersey, $80 million in insurance payments every single year for pedestrians that are hit by cars and they don't have their own car insurance to protect them when they're hit by another car. $80 million, right? 24 billion for highway widenings and more pollution. When that plan went through, what they did was in March of 2020, the beginnings of the pandemic, when no one was paying attention, they lined up 20 lobbyists, like 20 lobbyists from construction companies, from unions, from, you know, the turnpike, from whatever. They just pulled 20 lobbyists to speak and say why, you know, wasting $24 billion is good. And they said, oh, it's about jobs. Yeah, someone's getting paid, right? Of course, you're spending $24 billion. But why is that good for New Jersey? Why is it good for the public, the 9 million people that live in New Jersey? And, you know, the lack of participation there, like, there wasn't a single comment. There wasn't a single public comment. It was an open meeting, but not a single public comment to oppose that. And the opportunity for any of us here, any of your neighbors and your friends to go and comment at public meetings and say, you know, this is not right. Like, this tremendous sum needs to be allocated to things that will benefit us, benefit future generations. You know, I think that there's a huge opportunity to do that. And so I don't see it as us versus them. I see it as us versus the lobbyists, as us versus the special interests. And right now, there's a lot of silence. You know, if we had, you know, 1,000 more people across New Jersey commenting in public meetings, it would be tremendous. And on these big issues, big ticket dollar issues that are going to affect for generations to come.
So, you want to ask the question?
Yeah. Whenever there's a moment.
Okay, so let me just comment on the question that was asked. Right, Kate?
Yes.
So-
Okay, go ahead.
So, maybe I'm misinterpreting the question that this person asked, but the way that went through my filter is that, and I thought that I heard you say this, when people don't get involved in issues that don't impact them directly, was that what you meant? That was one of the things that you meant. We're all harmed by that, because eventually, if you look at problems as a continuum, and they start here, right? And you may be over here, but eventually, Sister Kate, that problem's gonna come right back to you, eventually, in some way, shape, or form. So I'll give you an example. Kevin back there lives in the city of Camden, and there was an issue, there is an issue, not there was an issue, with this incinerator being built right in the middle of a black neighborhood, right? I didn't live in that neighborhood. That issue doesn't necessarily impact me directly, but when they got out in the street, I was there in the rain, standing with them. Because guess what? At the end of the day, the more people you have involved in an issue, the stronger the impact will be when you're fighting back. You're helping other people in other communities. And that is what we really need to start thinking about. Not whether or not it impacts me directly, but how can I help this community fight so that eventually my community will be, you know, exempt or saved from what's going on in another community. That turnpike issue affects all of us. If you drive, even if you ride in a car, if you've ever been to New York, So you may not be able to be at every protest, but maybe there's something within your bag of tricks that you can do to impact an issue that may not affect you directly.
And I definitely want to clarify as well, because I want to make sure that it's clear that I'm definitely not anti-government when I'm saying us versus them. I'm pro a free, fair, and just democratic process and having a government that represents the people. I feel like when I talk about holding the government accountable and making sure that they're representing us the way that the people, quote unquote, voted them into, because like you had mentioned with your voter turnout being 7%, in Newark it's less than 5% that are voting for even the school board. And that's a problem. And not to even mention also, for the Passaic Valley Sewage Commission, half of those board of commissioners are council people. The same people making decisions. So making sure that people are aware of those things and making sure that we're holding them accountable and knowing that if they are not doing the right thing, they will get voted out, as opposed to getting sponsored by these corporations that are keeping them in office and bringing them into these offices in the first place. We're aware of those things and spreading that out and having civic engagement, accessible civic engagement, and knowing that no matter what your position is, what your perspective is, that you are engaged and you're voting. And if you can't do that, no matter what your status is, you're aware of what's going on and you have a voice in saying what you need done.
Yeah, absolutely. Holding your government officials accountable for being anti-government. So yes, thank you. And I think both of you are highlighting the need to sell people on collective values, not just that individualism, right? But yeah, absolutely. And that was a rainy day that we were out there in solidarity. Yeah, there was a question in the front row.
Yeah, I had one. I don't know which gentleman it was. One was talking about safe streets and the Turnpike Union. And I was wondering if you've reached out to disabled communities in New Jersey, because I'm a blind individual. I've been blind my whole life, and I'm very active in the blindness community in the state. And I have to tell you, without a guide dog, I do not feel safe crossing the street. It's literally, it's come down to, I mean, I know friends of mine who are fully sighted, and they go, I don't feel safe crossing the street. When I was in a training program in another state, they said the car will stop for you. And I went, yeah, come to Jersey and try that, you'll die. So it just might be another, organization that can help in the fight, because it sounds stupid that if someone who doesn't have a car, like myself, gets hit by a car, then the state of New Jersey pays for just ridiculous.
I'm sorry for the experiences that you've had and that you don't feel safe on our roadways. I think that's what people need to think about when they're valuing their personal convenience over the rights of all of us, of all ages and all abilities, to be able to use our roadways. Especially in New Jersey, it's completely a myth that our roads were designed for cars. Absolutely not. Our roads were designed for walking and for trolley cars. Like, that's what they were originally for. And then after that, they were designed for bicycles. And then maybe like 70 years later, right? Then we started having cars, right? And do we go easy on things like drunk driving, on speeding, or do we respect the right of all road users to get safely from point A to point B? A lot of what we do in our community on the Safe Streets issue is just talking with crash victim families, and the costs are so great. Not just those 600 deaths, but injured and the families beyond that. I think there's a really big intersection here between environmental justice from an air pollution, from a clean water perspective, as well as sort of this pollution of road dangers that just emanates from just this constant rushing and lack of transit and you know, I do think, I hope, you know, this is just a hope, I don't have a plan, like, you know, I do hope, you know, that New Jersey does become a more transparent and more well-run state, because how many intersections are not ADA accessible? How many don't have, like, you know, the nice ramps, you know, the signals with the audio, and how many intersections do we need to redesign to be safer if we don't have a government that is competent and able to do things at an efficient and low cost? You know, how many hundreds of years are you gonna be sitting here waiting for the better world that we all can be living in? So yeah. Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome. I'll just, one last comment, at the C9 in Morristown where they train the guide dogs, they actually use a Tesla, the dog, to car check the dogs, to get them used to doing traffic checks. And as a blind person, you cannot hear a Tesla, so you have to rely on the dog. And there was one night, my dog literally stopped for a vehicle that was going in front of me. I had no freaking clue it was there. So it's just, it's unfortunate, but it's not safe throughout the entire state for a disabled community.
Scary that they told you just to step out and the car will stop.
Exactly.
All right, how about another question? Yeah.
So my question is, have you tried to partner with other organizations, because there are organizations that are involved in climate change? And if so, at the county level, I attended a meeting at the county level and I heard the same conversations. So it's not just a particular group that's concerned. I think we're all concerned, and everybody's talking about the same thing. But one question is, what are the solutions? I mean, I need a car soon, and I started looking at electric cars, and I found out that batteries are very toxic. And the question was, I started doing research. I went online. China is doing tons of research because they're doing 45% electric vehicles. And would I want a battery factory in Woodbridge or Newark? No. So if we're going to get rid of fossil fuels, do we want to replace it with a factory that makes those toxic batteries? There's a lot of research being done to improve the batteries. But my question starts, have you partnered with other, because I think we need to get together beyond just you and the people. It's the leading groups. Are you getting together to see what the answers are? I hear a lot of towns, they're building high bridges so that there's more people there's more sidewalks, and there's more areas, like Union County is trying to build a Hyde Park to have more people walk and ride bikes because they don't fit on the street anymore. So everybody's working on something, but the alternatives, there's toxicities there too. And I think we need to get together beyond just, you know, you're doing excellent work. I really applaud you for what you're doing, but I think we need to partner with other, the grids, the electric grids cannot support the electricity that's needed to have electric cars either.
So is your question then, for everyone, can we ask maybe all of you how you will, work with other organizations, either environmental or
and then
just
alternatives. I mean, what we're going to start with, we all know what we need. What is the starting point?
Okay, that feels like two questions, but I love the idea of talking about building alliances and working with other groups, so yeah, Alex, you want to start?
Well, like I said at one point, I don't know stuff, and I can prove it, but to me, I mean, it's interesting, like, you know, electricity, when you think about it on an abstract level, and some people say, okay, to fight climate change, we need nuclear. To me, it's almost like a debate as to what's the worst addiction. Is it crystal meth or is it heroin? You know, but the commonality in all this is the waste. We don't know what to do with our waste, be it nuclear waste, be it the fossil fuel climate change. So I mean, I think what you're getting to is what needs to be done is, you know, how, recycling, for example. I mean, can these batteries be recycled? If so, how can they? How do you push that? I mean, in Al Gore's speech, you brought up a good point that in some ways the plastic recycling was a huge propaganda win. You know, you think that with all these plastic bottles we're doing something with it, but you know, it appears that we're not. And sometimes I look at it and say, well, what happened to the glass? You know, we used to have glass bottles. You know, what happened to that? So even how we go to work, how we commute. I mean, I remember hearing in France at one point in time, their solution to employment issues was, hey, why don't we have a 4-day work week? You know, I think there's things that we can do. Public transportation, I think that was mentioned earlier by this gentleman. He was saying that instead of widening the road, where the city's trying to cut down on vehicular traffic, maybe that's a way we can address some of these transportation issues. So I think, you know, I don't have a good answer to what you have to say, but I think that if we push these matters, if we think creatively, if we look at even the small solution, conservation. I mean, as a result of the gas crises in the 70s, there were some improvements, not enough, but good improvements made that if we were using gasoline at the same rate we did in the 70s, you know, we would have a much worse situation than we have now, even though it's bad. I'm old enough to remember the old big cars we used to have. I think we used to measure them in gallons per mile. That kind of thing. You know, we don't. Well, then we got back to Hummers, but you know, I mean, we have ways that we can dramatically reduce our impact, and it's a matter of the will to do that. Thank you.
I think you made up really good points in talking about how some of the solutions we have seem counterproductive. I want to point out a couple of things in that we should definitely be divesting from these things, of course. Like what you had mentioned with public transportation, and that's being a topic as well. Like we should be, and I also mentioned earlier about how we're commodifying accessibility. I'm talking about that from terms of transportation as well. Like living in a walkable city is getting more and more expensive to this day. Like being able to live in a place where you can walk to your grocery store, walk to any stores that you need to get the things that you need should not be expensive. It shouldn't be inaccessible because people like the communities that we're serving in Black and Brown communities as well, they should be able to have access to those things, and it shouldn't be coming at these exorbitant rates. And then when we're talking about waste as well, I mean, I can't speak to what we're going to do with the batteries. I don't know. But when we're talking about other methods of waste, and even talking about recycling, you know, less than 10% of things that are recyclable are even getting recycled in the first place. Oftentimes they're getting led straight to incinerators. And when we look at incineration, a lot of the waste that we are burning is food waste. Why don't more people talk about composting as an alternative, right? Like, why aren't we talking about how much food waste is in restaurant industries, how much food waste we have like on a day-to-day basis? Like, these are all important points to bring up, and seeing how we can look at these alternatives as realistic and tangible, as opposed to this is not what we can do right now, and we need to be looking at what we can do with what we have.
Yeah, I think two areas in which I think there can be like more of an alliance, I think, is in transportation and walkability. The majority of trips are less than 3 miles, actually. So, but it is not always safe to walk or bike those 3 miles. I just came back from a work trip in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, at a hotel, and you have to walk across the 6-lane highway to go to the like a convenience store, right? To just get some basic supplies, and the assumption is you're just gonna drive everywhere, even if it's a very, very short distance. And unfortunately, I think a lot of places in New Jersey today, it's also not safe for those short 3 miles. I think something else is that is helpful to think about, I think, is the micromobility revolution that's happening. If you look at e-bikes, and I've personal experience riding one, it is like the fastest and most convenient way to get around a lot of places in Hudson County. And those are getting, there's like a miles per gallon equivalent for electric vehicles, right? Those get between 1,000 and 2,000 miles per gallon equivalent. A Tesla or electric car EV might be like 100, 120, something like that. 1,000 to 2,000. People say it depends on how you calculate it. If you eat meat, it's possibly more efficient than biking. If you think about how amazing that could be in terms of carbon and the pollution that it can help with in the world. I think the last thing I'll say is just aligning. If we could align more around like end goals. As a society, as a government, we have limited resources to make progress very, very quickly, against this challenge of climate change and local pollution, all those things. And, for safe streets and things, we have this thing called Vision Zero, which is like, okay, can we get to 0 deaths? And there's a program adopted in cities around the world, and a lot of cities have gotten really close to that. And what you do is you report on it every single year, and you think about like, how are we doing? Are we thinking about in every single county? Like, well, yeah, probably most people drove today, right? Like, we don't want to, right? Like, I know we don't, right? Like, I know we prefer like a more sustainable way. This is reality today. What if we measured in every single county, like how much gas we're using every single, carbon that we're using every single year, and are we bringing it down every single year, right? Like, it's not about how many EVs we buy, right? Like, there's a variety of ways to fix things. What are the cost-effective ways we can do to make some progress on that? And so, yeah, those are some thoughts. Sorry, one very, very quick. I'll just say, like, zoning is like the devil. Like, so many like stores, like, a nice restaurant or a small shop selling things close by, like, there's like these parking requirements. Oh, it's like, oh, it has to be at least 50 foot wide or you can't have a store. Like, well, it'd be really nice to have a store in my neighborhood. And it's like, well, it's not allowed. It's not 50 foot wide or whatever. Like, there's all these regulations that is over-regulated for very, like, neighborhood kinds of things. And if we could allow that more, then we could create these walkable and bikeable communities. And those laws are, unfortunately, it's controlled by every single little municipality all across the state. And sometimes they don't like these things. They like one thing or they don't like one thing. It's historical, it's racist, it's like whatever. It's like not very good reasons for why it's in there. But if you want walkable, bikeable communities, I think that's another place that would be productive to form alliances and really do.
Yeah, did you want to answer that one or no? Okay, yeah, maybe all the way in the back, the very last row there.
Hi, first I just want to say thank you so much for all your powerful messages. I'm learning a lot here, this is great. There's a huge intersection of all these issues, and I hear needing new partners. So, sorry, shameless plug. I'm with the New Jersey Bike Walk Coalition, and we have our annual conference coming up. One of our keynote speakers is Sean LaTourette, Department of Environmental Protection. I have some postcards if anyone's interested. Thank you, Jimmy, for representing Hudson County Complete Streets, all the issues. Everyone else, it comes down to clean air and water. That's why, our Vision Zero stuff is way upstream, and it comes down to such simple things. It's like, we need clean air and water. So thank you for all the work you're doing, getting engaged, local community. That's what we're doing. So thank you so much. I'll have postcards if you want to come to our annual conference. It's May 18th. Thank you.
Yeah, and the question right here. Thanks, Charlie.
Hello. Love hearing everything that you are all doing and bringing up so many issues. It might have been a little bit overwhelming for me, at least. And as someone that is also a community organizer, it can be overwhelming to connect everything, because everything's all interconnected at the end. But I would like to ask, what do you enjoy the most about community organizing? Going back to that oh, why am I doing this in the first place? And why do you think it's rewarding?
Great question. Anyone want to start?
Thanks for asking, Steph. I feel like oftentimes I have to like tap back into those like, whoa, like this is a lot is going on. Reminder that rest is resistance. And I think one of the things that really keeps me in the work and really motivates me to keep going is just the fact that like there's so many amazing people that really care about the stuff that we do, and like even being able to meet the people that are here today and talk about the issues that we're all connected on helps me want to do it again and want to do more. Informing even more people that weren't able to make it here today to learn about these things. I enjoy teaching people about what a green future really looks like, and how we can get there, and how it's attainable, how it's tangible, and how it's realistic. Yeah, I think that's definitely what it is. And you know, I get tapped into amazing people that are doing great things. Like yesterday I had like homemade granola and it was amazing, and it was also a doula, and there was all these like people are doing everything. You meet a lot of holistic things and holistic people as well that show you how you can, you know, divest from all the things that are bad for you into things that are really good.
Well, how else am I going to get to see people like Paula and Matt Smith here, you know, unless there's some issue? And gets me out of my house and coming down here. So, no, it's good. Even now that I think about it, even opposition-wise, I mean, it's you know, it's interesting to see a cross-section of people, from different backgrounds, and to me, I find that interesting in some of the things I'm doing, and even if they're in opposition to engage with them, and to me, I find that very interesting. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm learning a lot when I talk to people like Paula and Matt Smith, and like you, your questions here. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, and also, you know, I want to put water in there. That's why I'm interested as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of organizing, you know, I think it is important to do things that are fun and that you find sustainable and to not burn out. I think that is like something common in this community. I think having fellow advocates and friends to talk to is good. I really relate to the idea that, you know, when you're having surgery, that you're like, oh, if someone else can organize, it's like a great gift and comfort to you. And that's what I want to see. I want to see other people organizing, other people thinking about these issues. And when other people are out there doing that, then I feel good. So like that's one, I share that. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's the sustainability of it. The things I find fun, I think like when there's group bike rides and it's like fun, it's like safe. Native plants and people gardening and composting, you know, I find those things fun. You know, all good stuff, but yeah, keep it sustainable, and then get back out there and do the cool things. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're almost out of time. I think we're down to like our last minute here. So maybe we could end with you guys speaking to how people can be better allies and support you in the work that you're doing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quickie.
Go ahead.
Chloe, it's been exciting working with you for the last several years trying to stop the PVSC power plant in the Ironbound. Why is it so friggin' hard to win to stop that damn power plant, even though there all are alternatives? And why do you want everyone here at this gathering to be there next Saturday at noon at the Down Bottom Farms?
Was that a question, really, Paula?
Why is it so difficult? It's fine.
That's so exciting.
I feel like that was almost giving directions. Give people directions of how to drive there. But yeah, here you go.
How do we get there?
Yeah, so you hop on the garden state if you're feeling froggy. But thank you, Paula, for that. I appreciate that. I was definitely gonna tag that in with your last question. But yeah, we are coming out with bringing out as many people as possible to let them know that we do not want a fourth power plant in the Iron section of Newark. We don't need it. There's so many alternatives that come with it. We're talking about electric, talking about having solar instead. And not to mention there are other facilities that aren't even in working or working at that moment that they could plug into as opposed to just building a whole new one. But we are going to be at Down Bottom Farms. It's at 371 Ferry Street. You won't be able to miss that big blue building that's right in front of us. And we're going to be in Newark. We're going to be at right there with empanadas, also vegan ones as well. And we're also going to, most importantly, have the vibes. The vibes are going to be good. We're going to be marching to PBSC, and we're going to have great speakers. We have the Southward Environmental Alliance. We have a local councilman who's going to be speaking as well. And we're going to have great people that are going to come out and march with that same message as well. So please, we'd love to have you there next Saturday, April 20th at 12 p.m.
Yeah, very simple. I have some stickers if folks want, but turnpiketrap.org, if you haven't been there before, there's some information about that. We recently updated our petition because New Jersey Transit has a fare hike that's coming up. You know, with so many billions, there's definitely some alternatives there for the Turnpike to get more money in New Jersey Transit. Check it out. If you haven't signed the petition yet, click on it and it'll send off some good emails to your local electeds to get them involved as well. So, yeah. Turnpiketrap.org.
I would just say for Project Maple, stay tuned. They have something called Open Season from September to December of last year. So they're in this, they call it FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission process. I don't think there's any necessarily set time for when they're going to present their plan to the public for public comment. But just kind of stay tuned, keep that on your radar screen because it's a massive expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure in the Northeast. And then there's a very wise man that, I think his name is Matt Smith, who told me that a third of Pennsylvania has been fracked. Like, I think that was like 5 years ago. How much is it now? He's so smart, he's forgotten what he said. That man told me a third about 6 years ago. I think it's gotten much worse since then. So even though there's been a lot of progress made in this region, I mean, we have to realize our world is round. So, just because we have a win here, that doesn't mean that, we can forget about other places. Thank you.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Ironbound Environmental Justice. Thank you.
Amazing. All right, I think we're out of time. So to our panelists, thank you so much for being here, for your inspiration. We appreciate you and all the work that you do. And thank you to everyone that joined us for this workshop and for us today.